This video might contain violence and strong language. Parental guidance is advised. I live in a predominantly white neighborhood, and one thing I love about white people is that they don't spend money on dumb shit. Except of course boats, expensive bicycles and biltong. However, with biltong you don't know whether you are eating meat or chippies, and I'd rather spend 60 rands on a proper piece of steak than to buy a pack of biltong. But today we're talking about things you should consider doing when your monthly car expenses start showing you flames. Almost all the houses on the street towards my estate are owned by white people, and there's no fancy German cars in any of those houses because Mahu are very strategic when it comes to spending their hard-earned money. I once had a chat with this other dealership CEO, and he shared some stories about all the dealerships his family owns and that they have farms and whatnot, and I was like, what? These guys are rich, moose. I'm busy studying their behavior, and when they least expect it, I'm going to take back the land and the dealerships, then expropriate the cars without compensation. I'm joking, I won't take the dealerships. So let's get to the business of the day, and we'll start by focusing on downgrading as one of the things you should consider doing when you start seeing flames. Downgrading happens in two ways. You can either downgrade before getting yourself into a financial mess, or downgrade after getting yourself into a mess. Let me explain what I mean by that using a practical example. When I was doing final year university, my dream car was a blue BMW 320i M Sport with a blacked out grille and blacked out wheels. I was sure that's the car I was gonna buy when I start working. Well, I started working in 2019, and after my first pay I was like, nah, that BMW thing is not going to happen, because I was not prepared to spend a huge percentage of my hard-earned money on a silly sedan. Mentally, I had to downgrade to a realistic car that was gonna be in line with my budget. So I ended up buying a second-hand Polo Vivo, which only costed 169,000 rands. In this case, I pre-downgraded before getting myself into a mess because the numbers were not balancing. Downgrading after getting yourself into a mess is the hardest form of downgrading. Most of us as black people grow up with nothing, and when we start working, we want to have everything at once. We want to stay in upmarket suburbs, drive fancy cars, and take our kids to Model C schools with only just one source of income. Then when you start drowning financially, it is extremely difficult to find the courage to say, no man, I have to let go of my silly SUV and I must take my kids out of Cure. Because if imbuzi dom, no munga ise Cure kuyafana dom lembuzi. I posted a poll asking what's the best thing to do when your monthly car expenses start showing you flames. 7,000 people voted, and a 65% majority said downgrading is the best option, but I can tell you now, in reality, when shit hits the fan, it's not easy to downgrade. And I'll use Dr. Malinga's story as an example because it's already out there and most people can relate to it. Dr. Malinga is not broke, he just has liquidity problems. In the Podcast and Chill episode, he mentioned that a few years back he bought a house worth millions, cash. That's 3 million if I'm not mistaken, and the house is apparently a double story. The thing is, yes, a house is an asset, but it is less liquid in the liquidity spectrum. For those who don't know, in simple terms, liquidity refers to how quick can you turn an asset back to cash. For instance, you can sell your fully paid car within a day and get your money back. So a car is more liquid than a house because you can't sell your house in one day and get your millions back. That's liquidity in a nutshell. So Dr. Malinga has a huge amount of his money tied up in a less liquid asset. And the only way for him to get his money is to sell the 3 million rands double story and downgrade to something cheaper, or take a loan against the equity in the property, but let's not go there. I'm not saying Dr. Malinga must sell his house, by the way. I'm just trying to show you that when your back is against the wall and you have to make a strong decision, most people find it difficult to consider downgrading even if it's the only option they have, because they are accustomed to the lifestyle they are living. Downgrading takes some courage. Forget about societal expectations or what people will say. The gentleman who owned my house before me sold it to me because of some financial challenges, and till this day I respect him. He really changed the way I see things. You can't let material things define who you are, because when shit hits the fan, it's gonna be close to impossible for you to let go of those things. But now, downgrading means different things to different people. To some, downgrading is letting go of a Beamer for a Polo, while to others is letting go of a Polo for a Picanto. So now the question is, if you are already driving a Picanto and you are seeing flames, what do you downgrade to? That's where the downgrading debate gets tricky. For some, it is not feasible to downgrade to public transport. Like in my case, if I resort to public transport, that means I'd have to take 6 taxis every day, and that's just ridiculous. In this case, one has to consider other options such as loan restructuring or eating pap and eggs every day to free up some cash, and we'll get to that. Please, no matter how smart you think you are, you must never cancel insurance to free up cash. If you cancel insurance, anything that can go wrong will go wrong, trust me. You can drive your car for years without being involved in an accident, but the day you cancel your insurance, you will cry tears. Some people say no, downgrading is a bad idea because when you sell your big car, you may have a huge shortfall, so you are still losing money. Look at it this way. If you owe 500,000 rands for a GTI and you decide to downgrade and you only manage to sell it for 410,000 rands, that leaves you with a huge shortfall of 90,000 rands, which seems like a bad thing. But now let's say you downgrade to a 150,000 rands car and roll over your 90,000 rands shortfall to a new finance deal. Your total debt will be 240,000 rands. So by downgrading, you instantly move from owing 500,000 rands to only owing 240,000 rands, and you still have a car to move from point A to B. In my opinion, you are in a better financial position when you are owing 240,000 rands than when you are owing 500,000. That's just my opinion and shouldn't be regarded as financial advice. Let's move on to loan restructuring. Banks are crooks, but sometimes they are very understanding, Shem. So if you see that a financial disaster is brewing, don't just sit there and hope things will get better. Hope is not a plan. Approach your credit provider and inform them about your situation. Not everyone qualifies for loan restructuring though, but you have to approach your credit provider and see what options will they present to you. Let's say you are seeing flames and you've explored all the options I've mentioned so far and you feel like they won't work. You can also consider voluntary surrender, which is basically you making arrangements with the bank to just hand over the car to them because you can't keep up with the payments anymore. This should be your last resort because it affects your credit profile. Surrendering the car doesn't mean you're off the hook, by the way. After the handover, the bank will auction the car, usually at a ridiculously low price. Let's assume you owe them 250,000 rands. They can sell the car for only 100,000 rands, and that will leave you with a shortfall of 150,000 rands. The crazy part is that you are liable for the shortfall, so you end up paying for a car you no longer have. In some cases, the money they get from the auction is enough to settle your account, and in that case you'll be off the hook, but your credit profile will still be affected because you failed to adhere to the terms of your loan agreement. So you will be seen as a bad person, Lebogang, because you borrow money but you can't pay it back. After surrendering your car, you have to do a follow-up to check whether the account is settled or not, because if there's a shortfall, you'll be kind of blacklisted until you settle the account. One thing I learned from COVID lockdowns is that life is very unpredictable. One minute you have all the money in the world, and the next minute you are sitting at home forced to raise your own kids for the first time with no income. If you ever find yourself in a situation like that, and there's a shiny Beamer in your garage, the stinking BMW must go. Don't get to a point where the bank has to repossess the car, because you may not recover from that even in your next life. In order to repossess your car, the bank has to go the legal route, and you will be liable for the legal cost. So now you will owe them money for the car and money for the lawyers, whereas that whole mess could have been avoided. I know today I'm very serious. No silly jokes. Icon. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more car content in a Mzansi context.